In the early spring of 2003, three friends from a quiet town in Utah set out on what was supposed to be a weekend of discovery, laughter, and adventure. They were young men in their 20s, curious, ambitious, and drawn to the kind of mysteries most people only whisper about. But by Sunday evening, when none of them returned home, a series of events began that would leave investigators questioning everything they thought they knew about what existed beneath the Earth's surface. Before we begin, if you're fascinated by true stories of disappearances, cold cases, and eerie discoveries, make sure to subscribe. Every story we share reveals the chilling edge where curiosity meets danger, and where the truth hides in the shadows. Now, let's begin the story of three male friends in 2003 disappeared inside the Forbidden Cave. Just outside the small desert town of Delta, Utah, lies a barren stretch of land surrounded by sandstone ridges and silent plains. Locals know the region well, but there's one area few dare to visit, a narrow canyon path leading to a cave they call the Devil's Passage. The cave's entrance looks unremarkable from a distance, a simple black mouth in a cliff face. But anyone who's been close to it can describe the unnerving silence that surrounds it. No birds, no wind, just stillness. For decades, rumors had circulated about the cave. Some said it was an abandoned mine sealed off in the 1960s after multiple accidents. Others believed it was part of a collapsed cave system extending miles beneath the desert. But the story most locals whispered was that the cave was forbidden for a reason, that people who entered it sometimes didn't come back. In 2003, three close friends, Evan Myers, Derek Cole, and Ryan Fletcher, heard those stories. And like many before them, they didn't believe them. All three were outdoor enthusiasts, experienced hikers, and amateur cavers. To them, the cave wasn't a curse, it was a challenge. Over the years, the trio had explored abandoned rail tunnels, dry mine shafts, and even underwater caverns. They thrived on pushing boundaries. But this time, something about the cave seemed to call to them. Evan, the quiet and analytical one, had found old geological maps suggesting that the area once housed an unrecorded cavern network. He believed the Forbidden Cave might lead to something undiscovered, an untouched part of Earth's underbelly. By the time they told friends of their plan to explore the cave on March 28, 2003, they had already packed supplies: headlamps, oxygen meters, rope, and a handheld camcorder. Nobody tried to stop them. Most thought it was just another weekend trip. What nobody realized was that this trip would become one of the most disturbing disappearance cases in Utah's history. Early the next morning, Saturday, March 29, 2003, the three friends left Evan's apartment in Salt Lake City before dawn. According to a gas station receipt later found in the vehicle, they refueled around 6:43 a.m. and made one final supply stop before heading toward the western desert. The drive from the city to Delta is long and monotonous. Hours of pale brown land stretch endlessly, interrupted only by power lines and the faint mirage of heat rising from the road. Along the way, the group documented small pieces of the trip with a handheld camera. Investigators later reviewed that footage, only about 15 minutes in total, but the clips offered fragments of a journey that would never be completed. In the footage, the mood was light. The camera caught flashes of open desert and, at one point, a short segment of Evan unfolding a topographic map on the hood of the car. His finger pointed toward an unlabeled section of terrain, the spot believed to be the entrance to the Forbidden Cave. The last visible frame showed the trio walking toward a ridge, their silhouettes shrinking against the rising sun. By noon, they were believed to have reached the site. Locals who lived several miles from the canyon later reported hearing faint echoes, what sounded like distant drilling or a metallic scraping, from that same direction that afternoon. None thought much of it at the time. In that region, strange sounds are common. Mining, weathering, or even collapsing rock formations can all create eerie echoes. When the men failed to return by Sunday evening, families began to worry. They weren't reckless adventurers. They had full-time jobs, families, and structured routines. Missing a day or two without contact was unusual. Evan's older brother was the first to drive toward the desert, hoping to find their vehicle. At 9:20 p.m., he located the car parked near the canyon path, just as the coordinates on Evan's map had indicated. The doors were locked. Inside were food wrappers, water bottles, and a folded blanket. But the unsettling detail was the way their gear was organized in the trunk, meticulously arranged except for one missing pack, the one that had contained the camera, spare lights, and ropes. It appeared they'd gone into the cave prepared. The following morning, a small search team of local volunteers, joined by the county sheriff's office, began to explore the area. The entrance to the cave was narrow, no more than 4 feet across, and partially obscured by debris. Investigators noted a faint smell of sulfur and the presence of disturbed rocks near the opening, as if someone had recently moved through. The initial descent went only about 20 feet before the space split into 2 narrow tunnels. The left path appeared blocked by fallen stone, but the right continued deeper. At this point, rescuers discovered what would be the first confirmed trace of the missing trio: a small nylon rope looped around a rock and extending into the darkness. They followed it until it disappeared into a crevice. Beyond that point, the air was noticeably colder. By the end of the first search day, no one had been found. The team retreated as night fell, noting that radio signals cut out entirely inside the cave after about 30 feet. The following morning, they returned with stronger lighting and oxygen sensors. That was when the cave began to reveal its unsettling nature. The second day's exploration showed that the tunnel did not simply lead downward, it spiraled. The deeper the team went, the more erratic the layout became, as if the rock had been warped or melted. Oxygen levels dropped sharply the further they progressed. A rescue diver described the atmosphere as wrong. Not just stale air, but something else, like static or vibration you could feel in your chest. When they reached the 30-meter mark, the team stopped. There was no sign of the missing friends, but the rope ended abruptly. It wasn't cut. It just stopped, as if the remaining length had dissolved or frayed into dust. What they found next, however, changed the nature of the case from a simple search into something else entirely. By the third day of the search, the investigation had grown beyond local concern. The disappearance of 3 young men, especially in an area with such a mysterious reputation, quickly drew the attention of the Utah Department of Public Safety and several experienced cave rescue specialists. A formal base camp was set up at the mouth of the canyon. Maps were pinned to portable tables, marked with red ink to note each explored passage and dead end. The search plan was clear: document every tunnel, log every object found, and maintain strict safety protocols. Yet even with structure, the cave itself seemed to resist progress. Rescue teams described it as unpredictable. Air drafts shifted direction without warning. Stone walls appeared to hum faintly when touched, as though vibrations pulsed somewhere deep below. Communication radios frequently failed. At times, flashlights flickered or batteries drained faster than expected. The cave, it seemed, absorbed energy, both mechanical and human. On April 2nd, a group of specialists managed to access a deeper chamber by widening a narrow crawlspace. Inside, they found an area unlike the rest: smooth, damp walls with patches of dark mineral growth. Near the center of this chamber lay something the team could not immediately explain: a small handheld camcorder. The discovery was shocking. Forensic testing later confirmed it belonged to one of the missing men, Ryan Fletcher. The camera was water-damaged but intact. When it was later reviewed in a controlled lab environment, only a few seconds of corrupted footage could be recovered. The first frames were distorted, showing little more than flashes of light and the sound of distant dripping. But the final clear image, though lasting less than 2 seconds, showed a slanted view of the cavern floor. What drew the most attention wasn't what was seen, but what was heard: faint breathing, followed by a series of slow, irregular tapping sounds. Experts would later confirm that these sounds were not consistent with natural echo or geological activity. After that frame, the recording ended abruptly. The presence of the camera deep inside the unexplored section raised a haunting question. If the group made it that far, why was there no sign of them anywhere beyond? Searchers continued for days, marking each new area carefully. They found fragments of nylon from a climbing harness, a crushed flashlight, and one boot print partially preserved in mud. But every trace seemed to stop abruptly, as if the men had reached a limit that no one else could cross. By April 5th, after more than a week of exhaustive searching, operations were scaled back. Officials cited hazardous conditions and structural instability, though members of the rescue team quietly admitted that wasn't the only reason. Several had reported feeling unwell, dizzy, disoriented, even nauseated, while underground. One man described hearing whispers through his headset, even though no one else was transmitting. By April 7th, the cave was sealed temporarily for safety. Heavy equipment was used to reinforce the entrance, preventing anyone from entering without authorization. The families of the missing friends were devastated but refused to give up hope. For weeks, they visited the site daily, leaving candles, photos, and notes near the rocks. It would take another 3 months before the case took an even darker turn. On July 11th, hikers exploring an area several miles north of the original site stumbled upon something unusual: a vertical fissure partially hidden behind brush and stone. From within, they claimed to hear a faint metallic echo, almost rhythmic. When authorities investigated, they realized the fissure connected to the same subterranean network beneath the forbidden cave, only from a completely different angle. Inside that fissure, lodged in a crevice about 6 feet down, investigators found what appeared to be part of a human boot and several strips of decayed nylon cord. DNA testing later confirmed the fragments matched materials owned by Derek Cole. What disturbed experts most wasn't the condition of the remains, it was the impossibility of how they were found. The fissure was far from where the men were last seen, separated by layers of solid limestone. There was no clear route connecting both areas. It was as if something had moved them through the rock itself. By the time the discovery in the northern fissure was made public, the case had already begun attracting both media attention and speculation from the paranormal community. News outlets ran headlines about the Forbidden Cave mystery, and amateur investigators began posting theories online, ranging from geological anomalies to supernatural explanations. But behind the noise, the official investigation continued quietly, led by geologists, rescue specialists, and the Utah State Bureau of Investigation. Their goal was simple: map the underground system accurately and determine how the remains of one man ended up miles from the primary entry point. The deeper they studied, the stranger the data became. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a complex network of voids running beneath the desert, some natural, others shaped in patterns that didn't appear random. The chambers formed irregular rings, spiraling inward before tapering off abruptly, as though the earth had been carved by something more deliberate than water or erosion. In early August, a specialized research team returned to the original cave entrance with new scanning technology. They detected a massive empty space nearly 300 feet below, far beyond where search teams had previously ventured. The void appeared to connect with the fissure where Derek's remains were found. However, the density readings suggested a thin wall of unstable stone separated the two areas. Attempts to reach the chamber were abandoned due to the risk of collapse. Still, the data provided a possible explanation for how objects, or even people, could shift between locations underground if portions of the structure caved in. But geologists couldn't explain one detail noted in the early footage recovered from Ryan's camera: the pattern of tapping. When the audio was slowed and filtered, it revealed a rhythmic sequence of 6 distinct pulses, pausing, then repeating. It resembled code, too structured to be coincidence, but too incomplete to translate. Investigators attempted to reproduce the sound inside the cave, striking metal tools against the rock walls. The echoes were sharp and brief, nothing like what the recording captured. Whatever created that sound, it came from deeper within the earth. By late August, most of the official operation had wound down. The site was declared geologically unsafe, and further exploration was prohibited. For the families, the closure felt like surrender. They petitioned to reopen the cave several times but were denied due to safety laws. Evan's parents, however, never stopped searching for answers. They funded independent geological surveys, interviewed retired miners, and collected every possible document related to the area. One former surveyor claimed that during the 1960s, the region had been part of a classified mineral study involving deep seismic testing. The project was shut down after several researchers reported auditory distortions while recording underground frequency data. When the family asked for access to those old records, they were told the files were missing. Years passed, but the mystery only deepened. Locals continued to report strange sounds in the canyon, low vibrations that seemed to come from beneath the ground. Some said animals refused to go near the area. Others mentioned that their compasses would spin unpredictably within a few hundred feet of the old cave entrance. By 2007, the land was privately purchased by an energy company conducting exploratory drilling. Within months, all access to the site was permanently sealed with concrete. For the families, it was an unceremonious ending. No memorial, no resolution, just silence. But silence, as it turned out, didn't mean peace. In October of that same year, a geologist working for the company reportedly resigned after encountering something he refused to describe publicly. In a brief statement years later, he mentioned that during a scan of one of the sealed shafts, he detected organic echoes consistent with human movement, though no one was allowed to verify his claim. Officially, the case of the 3 missing men was declared unresolved. Unofficially, it became something else entirely. A story people shared in hushed tones whenever they passed through the Utah desert at night, glancing toward the ridges that still hid the cave no one was meant to enter. 5 years passed after the official closure of the site. By then, the case had mostly faded from public memory. Just another unresolved disappearance in the desert, mentioned only in late-night forums or small-town rumor. But for those who had been close to the investigation, the story never really ended. In 2012, a new thread of evidence appeared. During an extensive drought across western Utah, a section of land about 6 miles northeast of the sealed cave collapsed unexpectedly, forming a wide sinkhole. The area was immediately restricted, but one local hiker managed to capture photos before authorities arrived. The images showed a circular depression with exposed stone resembling the same mineral layers mapped under the forbidden cave system. Weeks later, state geologists inspected the collapse. What they found disturbed even the most skeptical among them. Inside the sinkhole's lower edge, partially embedded in the rock, was a fragment of a nylon backpack strap, and beside it, a small metallic object encrusted with mineral deposits. When cleaned, the item turned out to be a rusted wristwatch. The engraving on the back read, "To Evan, never stop exploring." The find reignited public interest, and pressure mounted to reopen the case. Investigators compared the mineral buildup on the objects with the estimated depth of the sinkhole. Results suggested they had been buried for at least a decade, consistent with the 2003 disappearance. But the geological profile raised a question no one could answer. There was no direct tunnel or cavity connecting the sinkhole to the original cave. It was as though the earth itself had rearranged. Around the same time, residents in Delta and nearby towns began reporting an unusual phenomenon. On certain still nights, a deep, rhythmic vibration could be felt in the ground, subtle but distinct, repeating at intervals. Some said it resembled distant machinery. Others compared it to a heartbeat. The noise was never officially documented, but phone recordings uploaded online captured the faint low-frequency hum. When analyzed, the pattern matched the tapping sequence recovered from Ryan's damaged camera years earlier. 6 pulses. Pause. Repeat. Authorities dismissed the claims as coincidental seismic activity. But to the families of the missing men, it felt like an echo, a signal that something, somewhere below, still moved. In 2014, a retired geophysicist named Harold Crane, who had worked on the original survey project decades earlier, came forward with his own findings. He revealed that his team had once drilled near that same location and recorded anomalies that defied explanation, areas of negative density, where radar signals bent inward rather than reflecting back. Crane described it as if the rock was not solid but folded space, capable of absorbing vibration and possibly matter. When asked if he believed that could explain the 2003 disappearance, Crane paused before replying, "If those readings were accurate, then anything that entered that zone might never come back out the same way." By the following year, the story took its final turn. A group of geology students from a Utah university, unaware of the site's history, conducted an unauthorized survey of the desert basin. Their equipment picked up unusually high magnetic resonance beneath the old cave coordinates. According to their notes, later confiscated by local authorities, the readings resembled the signal of something hollow moving slowly below the surface. They described it as shifting. None of the students could explain what caused it. And though no further discoveries were made, local witnesses claimed the ground tremors ceased entirely after that week, as if whatever had been stirring had finally gone still. To this day, no trace of Evan, Ryan, or Derek has ever been recovered. Only fragments, whispers, and impossible data remain. The cave was never reopened. Its location, officially erased from maps, lies buried beneath industrial land and concrete, quiet, dormant, and forbidden once more. But according to a few who still live nearby, every few years the desert floor trembles faintly again, always in 6 measured beats. And when that happens, they say the air feels heavier, as if the earth itself is remembering what it took. The case of the 3 missing friends has become one of Utah's quietest legends, an unsolved story buried beneath official reports, sealed cave entrances, and decades of unanswered questions. Over time, the desert reclaimed what little remained. The canyon path is now overgrown, its exact location blurred by weather and silence. Locals still avoid the area after dark. They speak of sudden temperature drops, of an odd pressure in the air when standing near the old ridge. Some insist they can still hear it, the low, methodical pulse that seems to rise from the ground, 6 beats at a time, fading just as quickly as it begins. For the families, there was never closure. No memorial could replace the truth they never received. Year after year, they petitioned for renewed investigation, but none came. To the state, the case remains a tragedy marked by geological danger and human curiosity gone too far. Yet for those who look closer, the story feels heavier than that. It speaks to something older and deeper than the missing men, a reminder of how little we truly understand about the world beneath our feet. Perhaps the cave was never cursed. Perhaps it was never supernatural. Maybe it was simply a place where the laws of nature twist quietly, where time and matter fold in ways we can't yet measure. But when we look at the patterns, the impossible distance between the remains, the identical rhythmic vibrations, the lingering hum, it's hard not to wonder if something ancient was waiting there all along. Something patient. Something that remembers. And maybe that's why, after so many years, no one has dared to unseal it. Because some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to stay buried, echoing through the stone, reminding us that curiosity has always carried a price. If you found this story haunting, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life disappearances and mysteries that still defy explanation. Because somewhere, even now, there are places in this world where light has never touched, and where the earth keeps its secrets well.